Hello and welcome to another episode of a Brothers Creed podcast, where we talk about motivation, experiences, and exploring what the world has to offer. We're the Thomas Brothers, and I'm Ethan.
And I'm Jared. And today we're going to talk about something that is very important. It is the attribute of self-awareness. I think this is something that is so important to learn and to cultivate in your life so that we can better manage ourselves, really, and just better manage and be intentional about the way that we're acting. So it's going to be a great episode.
All right, let's do it.
You can't climb the ladder of success with your hands in a pocket.
We will not go quietly into the night.
They tell me you're a man with true grit.
I am the one who knocks.
Don't ever tell me what I can't do, ever!
That's how winning is done.
Okay, well, let's dive in and let's talk about what is self-awareness. So the definition that I have is, I define it as the ability to see ourselves clearly and to understand who we are and how others see us and how we fit into the world. And so that was kind of my definition. How do you define self-awareness?
I struggled with this one a little bit because I wasn't, there's lots of different, facets of self-awareness, but the one that I kind of came up with that helped me understand it was the definition is understanding our purpose and the motivation behind our actions. That was kind of, self-awareness. Why am I doing this? Why did I do that? And why am I going to do this in the future? And then I kind of wrote some other things down that, being able to define why we do things and or not only why we do things, but what we can do to be better, was a couple of the definitions that I came up with.
Yeah, and in researching this, I found that there's so many advantages to being self-aware. One of these, a couple examples here is that people who are self-aware about what they're doing and what the actions they're taking, they're more fulfilled, they're more confident, they have better relationships, they communicate better, they're less likely to cheat or steal or be dishonest, and they're more effective leaders. So I think that I could take a healthy dose of each one of those attributes, seriously. And I think that this was a very worthy goal to work towards as a individual trying to progress themselves. I was listening to a TED Talk of a gal who wrote a book about this, and I'll talk about this or some of her findings later on. But she talks about how 95% of people think that they're self-aware, but only about 10 to 15% of people are actually self-aware. So that was interesting. I'll talk about that when we talk about how to be more self-aware.
Yeah. So I'll start with this is just a short story. And I don't really think I don't think I've ever really talked about this before, but years ago, I'd say it's probably 4 or 5 years ago, we were in a group setting with the family. And we were all just kind of sitting around like we do. We're talking, and it might have been during a family reunion or something. All the adults were sitting around talking. And one of my brother-in-laws was telling a story, and he was just talking about a specific topic, and I made kind of a quick, off-the-cuff, what I thought was going to be a funny comment. Mm-hmm. But whenever I delivered it, it was just, I thought it was going to be funny, but it was not, right? It came across as like me trying to belittle him, and it just made me look like a jerk. And as soon as I said it, I was just like, dang it.
I immediately regressed the scene.
Yeah, I should not have said that. And I don't even remember what I said. Yeah. I have no idea what it was.
But you remember the feeling.
But I remember that feeling, just like that pit in your stomach. And I mean, the conversation stopped, and everybody kind of looked at me, and then the conversation just kept going in a different direction. No one else probably remembers it, but I do. Yeah. Because it was just like this feeling of, why did I say that? What was it? What did I gain personally from that?
Yeah.
And it was kind of that related to self-awareness for me, because in that situation, I don't know, maybe my desire to be funny or make a witty comment, or maybe to lift myself up above someone else and make myself look cool, maybe that I was not very self-aware. I didn't think before I said something, and I regretted it. And I think it was like weeks later, I maybe mentioned to him, like, hey, man, I said something really stupid a couple weeks ago. And he was like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And so, a lot of times
Luckily people have short memories,
Yeah, well, a lot of times, and there's this could be a whole nother podcast, but a lot of times what we think is like on a scale from 1 to 10, 1 being no deal at all and 10 being like the worst grievance you could possibly do.
Yeah.
What might be a 10 for me and what I felt as a 10 for you could have been like a 2.
Yeah.
And it's all in the perception of an individual.
Yeah.
So that was just something that a personal story of mine that I didn't really feel self-aware. And so a lot of times now, I try to be a lot more self-aware of what I'm saying and what my audience is.
Yeah.
Because being aware of who your audience is, it can go a long way in, just kind of setting yourself and others up for success.
Yeah. And thinking about that, I think one thing that I've intentionally tried to do, and like you said, being aware, is you say something and you're just like, oh, why did I say that? In the past, and I think probably every guy, I think this might affect the guys more than it does girls, or maybe not. I'm not sure because I'm not a woman, but sometimes guys will joke around and they'll put each other down. They'll be like, oh, man. And we do that all the time. I've done that with you lots. And I think that in some cases that's okay. Yeah, that was a 10 for me.
A brother's love.
Yeah. In some cases, I don't know, depending on your relationship, I feel like that's okay. But as I get older, I feel like that's less and less appropriate, in that I would rather be joking with someone, and instead of putting them down, I would rather put them up. Instead of, saying like, oh man, like instead of joking about someone being ugly, I would rather joke about them being incredibly handsome. It's the same. It comes across the same, but one is like complimentary joking, and the other one is negative joking.
Yeah.
And whether you're joking or not, I think that joking is a way for people to get across. It's just a way for people to kind of almost express some of their feelings, but in a manner that's not serious. But still, you're expressing something. So if you say, "Oh man, you're the handsomest guy you've ever seen," that's better than like, you're ugly, But that can backfire, and I will tell you one story about that. How that can backfire. So I've been trying to do this, and so I was working. This was back when I was working. I've said it. I worked at Goldman. So I worked at Goldman Sachs for a while, and when I first got there, this other guy started the same day that I did, and it was funny because like literally we went to New York together to meet with our team in New York, and they were like, "Welcome to the Thunderdome. 2 people enter, 1 will leave." So that was like how our relationship started off.
Constantly pitted against
with
each other.
With that like precedence, And there was like basically 3 of us on the team. We had come in, and there was this other guy. We were all doing the same exact job. And so it was kind of like, so we were all pitted against each other, and we had all of us, me and this other guy particularly, were very different people, and we had very different beliefs and whatever. And one time when we first got there, after starting our jobs or whatever, he had gotten a Jeep, a used Jeep, and we went out to lunch with a bunch of people, and I rode with him. I was like, "Man, this Jeep is super nice." And I was like, "This is really nice." And he was like, "Yeah." I was like, "Man, I feel like I could. Does this thing shine my shoes too?" And like, I was like, "I feel like this thing could shine my shoes." And he just was like, he didn't say. He was just quiet. He thought I was being sarcastic and making fun of his car. And like, and in retrospect, I was like, why was he being like that? I was just trying to give him a compliment. I was just like joking because I really did think his car was nice. I mean, like, it was a nice Jeep, and I thought it was super nice. And I was exaggerating a little bit, but I did think it was nice. But like I think, but he was dead quiet. He was just like, this jerk,
Yeah, I thought you were making fun of him or being
Yeah.
super sarcastic.
I thought he thought that I was making fun of him, and being like, oh, this is such a nice Jeep, when really I was honestly trying to compliment him. So, sometimes your delivery has to, and sometimes, when you're a sarcastic person, like I can be sometimes, people are just like, do you really mean that? Or are you just saying that? So being a sarcastic person can really have its difficulties. When in doubt, don't use sarcasm.
Yeah, sometimes if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all.
But I was saying something nice.
That is true, but is it nice if
perceived it
it's
in a wrong way? So maybe just if you don't have something that cannot be perceived as negative, don't say it.
Well, I think that goes back to knowing your audience.
Yeah.
Because if you would have said something like that to me, then I'd have been like, oh yeah, shine your shoes here, hang your feet out the window, and then I don't know, driven past a sign or something like that.
Let me hit the windshield wiper.
The windshield wipers.
Fluid here. Yeah.
But yeah, just know your audience. But that's a good story.
Yeah. Well, he probably already didn't like. I know we weren't best of friends, but he probably didn't like me anyway. He was like, why do I have to take this guy? And I was like,
yeah.
And I was all of a sudden making fun of his car. Anyway.
So I think self-awareness is, we kind of been joking around about it, but self-awareness is, I think, being honest with yourself.
Yeah.
And I think true self-awareness hurts, right? Because you kind of say, whenever I said that dumb thing, I'm like, oh man, like I really had to look in the mirror and say, why did I say that?
Yeah.
And I had to dig down and say, well, I said that because I wanted to not consciously, but I wanted to belittle that person and make myself look better.
Yeah.
Which that's just selfish and prideful.
It's not who you want to be, and when you do that retrospective look at yourself, you can say that's not who I want to be. I want to be more intentional about doing that. I think that's the main tenet of self-awareness, is being intentional about stuff.
Yeah.
I was gonna say one story I wanted to share was I think that you can become self-aware by other people's actions, and I think that this is so evident. One time I worked at a place, and I think there was 2 ladies in there, and they would always clip their fingernails at work, and it drove to me like where we were at. We were like really in cubicles and whatever, and I was just like put my headphones in and I was just doing my work. But other people, it drove them absolutely crazy.
To hear click, 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 click on the other side of the wall.
Yeah, that there was someone clipping their fingernails, and there was like fingernail clippings all over the place. And I was like, wow, I can't believe how much that annoys somebody. I will never do that. I don't ever want to be that guy that clips his fingernails, Or
your toenails in the middle of the office.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And so I think that's a way that you can become self-aware. That's like the best way to learn is learn from other people's mistakes, and the hardest way is learn from your own mistakes.
Well, that's what was it? A smart man learns from his own mistakes, but a wise man learns from the mistakes of others.
There you go. That's what I was getting at. Yeah. So you can become self-aware by observing those around you, those people around you, and then saying, okay, well, I don't want to do that, or I do want to do this. One other example is that one time I was talking to this guy, and it was literally me just talking to this guy for probably 3 or 4 hours, probably 3 hours, and I was just talking to him. He didn't ever ask me a single question, and like I was like, man, that's kind of a weird. Like I'm talking to someone and they've never even asked me a question, and I'm just asking him questions, and then I was like,
and it wasn't because you hog the conversation.
No.
It was because if you weren't talking, there was silence.
There was dead silence, like dead silences for minutes at a time. And then I would think of something else to ask him. And oh, hey, how about tell me about this? And then it was a good. And then when we were talking, we were talking, but it was not. You didn't ask me a single question. And so I'm like, wow, am I like that? I'm like, I need to make sure that I'm not just talking about myself, And I'm fine like listening to other people because. I already know about myself. I don't need to talk about myself. I'm fine listening to other people because that's where you actually learn something. But it was just kind of, made me more self-aware. I'm like, well, am I like that? Am I asking people? Am I being intentional about asking them about their lives and how they're doing? So,
yeah, I like that perspective on self-awareness of learning from others. And at the same point, I want to kind of talk about learning from ourselves.
Yeah.
And adversity really helps us define who we are and what we truly want. So I think that's kind of like being honest with yourself. And a lot of times in moments of struggle, whatever your struggle is, the true you comes out. And that really kind of helps define, self-awareness. So there's kind of a principle that's called the refiner's fire, right? And it could be, it can go towards a couple different ways, but with precious metals, you mine gold or silver out of the earth, then you have to heat it up and you have to remove a certain portion of the waste material, and then you have to let it cool down. You have to heat it up again, and then you have to take out the precious material, and then you have to let it cool down, and then you have to put it in chemicals, and then have it a certain kind of acid that dissolves this other unwanted materials you don't want. So it goes through this process of refining. It's the same thing like when you're creating Damascus steel.
Yeah,
you have steel, and you put it together, and you put it in the oven, and you get it. Or you put it in the fire, and you get it red hot, and then you pound it out. And then you wait for it to cool, and then you cut it up into pieces, and you weld it back together, and then you put it back in the fire. That's kind of a newer way to do it. Or you fold it over on itself.
The Chinese.
Yeah, like the Japanese
with the
katana
katanas,
with the samurai swords. They fold the steel. So they heat it up, and then they bend it, and then they pound it into itself. And they heat it up red hot again, and then bend it, fold it, and pound it into itself. And just constantly doing that. And that heating and cooling is that refiner's fire that makes metal and steel. In this case, I was talking Damascus steel, but it's very strong. As long as it's tempered properly and everything else. But that refiner's fire can really help define who we are and give us a sense of that self-awareness. There was a story, I don't know, two extremes, maybe someone who gets laid off from a job, then they have to reconsider everything. They have to reconsider, well, what do I do, and where can I go from here? And that's kind of a defining moment that you have to take a step back, look in the mirror, and decide, what am I going to do, and what kind of person am I?
Yeah.
Or to the other extreme, I read a story about a family that lost like 3 children to leukemia, all under the age of 12.
Wow.
And I mean, I can't even imagine, but imagine that, like the refining fire that would be, and the trial that would be, the self-awareness that one would learn in that type of situation.
So when you, like in that situation, when you say the self-awareness that they would get, what do you mean by that?
So I just mean that they, you kind of learn about yourself.
How you learn about how you react.
You learn about how you would act through a specific trial or through a specific situation. I think that would that specific event or grouping of events would define you as a person. But
also refine you, because the way that you react doesn't necessarily mean that that's what type of person you are, because sometimes those trials are meant to improve you, pound you down so that you can improve, because maybe you need to be refined.
Yeah. And that kind of goes back to, like at the very beginning when I said, you kind of say a one-off comment and you're like, dang, why did I say that? And, maybe in the situation of, something happens or a trial comes and you react in a certain way, then you say, why did I do that? Why did I react that certain way to that adversity in my life? And then you kind of pivot from there and you say, well, I'm going to learn from that and be more self-aware next time something else happens, because it will happen, whatever it is in your life. And then whenever that happens, or a similar situation comes up, you say, oh, wait, I'm aware of how I acted in the past. This is how I'm going to act in the future.
Yeah,
or how I'm gonna
with
act
intention,
now. Yeah, for sure.
So one of the things that I want to talk about, well, did you have any more personal stories, or should we jump into
let's jump into how to be more self-aware.
Yeah, so I want to talk about that little bit I shared earlier. So I listened to this TED Talk from a gal named Tasha Eurich, and she wrote a book about this. It's called Insight, if you just search that, and it's about self-awareness and how some people actually think they're self-aware, but what they're really doing is just introspection. And how some of the data she ran across is that people who are seriously introspectors, or they introspect on themselves, that actually, the data showed that actually made them more depressed, more stressed, and more anxious and sadder. And the important thing is that when those people were introspecting like that, they were saying, oh, why am I like this? Why is this? Why is that? One of the things she shared was that, like, widows, I think this was, after the war, the widows, when they first would come to a realization of why they had that pain of that loss. Initially, they were okay, but down the road, they were several years later, they were not okay, because that asking that question why, and that just focusing on that caused more pain. And so she kind of asks, she studied all these people, and she found that there's a certain group of people who actually are self-aware, but they just changed the way that they introspect a little bit. And so instead of saying, why me? So, like, let's just, for one of the examples she gives is someone, doesn't get along with his boss. Instead of saying, me and this guy are like oil and water, we just won't get along, why me? Instead of saying that, say, what can I do to compliment this guy, or to better meet his expectations? So why, I feel like why is not an action word. It's just like, tell me why, or why am I feeling this way? Then you're just thinking about how awful you are.
Why did this happen to me?
Or like you're saying, like, why did I say that stupid word? Oh, I'm such an idiot. I'm just prideful. I'm so terrible. And that was like, that comment became a 10, like painfulness in your scale. Then you mentioned to him, and he's like, what are you even talking about? But instead of that, the question you should be asking is, what do I want people to think about me when we're talking in a conversation? What could I have said in that situation
what do I want build him up, maybe?
Yeah, or what do I want to project? Confidence in other people? Do I want to project kindness? And that's kind of what I was talking about earlier, is saying kind things instead of mean things, even when joking. And so that is something that she talks about in her book, and that's what makes all the difference. And those people who truly changed and were self-aware were those who used the action word of what instead of why. And so, instead, like, one other thing she mentioned, I'll say, is like, if someone gets a bad performance review, instead of saying, well, why did I do bad? It's better to ask, well, what can I do better? They're both asking the same question, but it's just a little bit different. It's, well, why did I do bad? Well, you did this bad, this bad, this bad. But what can I do better? Well, you can do these aspects better. It's really the same thing, but one is proactive and you're being intentional about what you're going to change, and the other one is
reactive.
And
I think it's a mindset situation too.
Yeah.
Just that positive thinking is huge.
Yeah, totally.
So, some of the things that I put together on how we can be more self-aware, I think we talked about this already, but one was understanding our audience, right? Yeah. So, for example, in different cultures, they have different traditions. Like, in certain Polynesian cultures, it's considered good manners to let out a big burp after a meal. Or, maybe in other cultures, it's considered proper to eat food with your hands. But if someone came to our dinner table and they were, eating food with their hands, they're not trying
animals.
They're not trying to offend me.
Yeah.
But it's just how am I might perceive it as like, oh wow, that's whatever. So you have to be self-aware of your situation.
Yep.
If I go somewhere and I have to kind of maybe adapt myself to that culture a little bit, to not be cultural appropriation, but to know your audience. So
well, that was like the Chinese. I mean, they do business very differently. What was it? Stan, we were talking to Stan. He said that the Germans do business very differently, and that they're very logical. It's kind of no nonsense. Just get the work done. Whereas you said Americans are more of like emotional. It's like, hey, we want to go out to the ball game together. We want to go out to the golf club, the golf course. We want to get to know you as a person and emotionally connect before we do business. And so that's a very different from, someone who sits down and says, here are the reasons why you should buy. You should buy.
Yeah. And then the person says, okay,
No.
that makes sense. Yes or no?
Yeah.
So another thing too with self-awareness is you have to understand that you don't always know best. Be humble enough to identify and admit when something when you're not right, or if you don't understand, or whatever else it might be. But you're not always right. Learn. Another one is we talked a little bit about trials. That was one, but this one's interesting. This is my last one. Is have an accountability partner.
Yeah, I was just going to say.
Yeah, have an accountability partner. And this is something that you and I do in the podcast is, let's say, someone that you love and that you trust and that you're close to. Maybe I might not know the audience. If I'm sitting around, I don't know, if I go to an event with my wife and I don't really know the audience, but it's her group of friends, and I'm sitting here making, I don't know, fart jokes or something like that. Like, she might kick me under the table and be like, that's not appropriate for this situation. That's hasn't happened, right? But that's an extreme version of, knowing, understanding a relationship or a topic, having somebody that can maybe kind of say, oh, well, that's not particularly kosher for this conversation. And that's something that we do in the podcast. Jared and I have a specific symbol that's kind of like, hey, maybe you've gone down a road that maybe I don't feel is the best direction for the podcast, and that you don't feel, and we trust each other enough to just say, okay, maybe Ethan or maybe Jared saw something that I didn't realize, and so I'm just going to trust and say, okay, well, we're going to turn this and go the other way. So I think that's really big too.
Yeah, I think that I've thought about that a lot. In fact, as adults,
actually, I'll say one thing, and it's not done in malice at all.
No.
It's not like, oh, you're dumb for saying that. It's done like purely in love, and for that person. Not that I know better than you. But sometimes I can't. I don't have eyes in the back of my head. I can't see, and you can maybe see what I can't see.
Yep.
So
you
go
just
ahead.
have to, someone that has your six, basically. Yeah, totally. I've thought about this a lot, in that as kids, you have people correcting you all the time. You have teachers correcting you. You have maybe leaders at church correcting you, saying, "Oh, that was you shouldn't do this." Or you have your parents, obviously, mainly your parents, your grandparents, your aunts, your uncles. I mean, other adults. I mean, there's people correcting you all over the place. But as adults, if you say something that's just absolutely asinine, or something that's so just off the wall, nobody's going to correct you. People are just going to give you really awkward looks. And
especially if they don't know you.
Unless you're socially aware enough and adept with that social, what would you call it?
Awareness.
Yeah. Kind of just like that awareness. You know what I'm talking about? Like reading social cues is what I mean.
Yeah.
Like, if you can't read social cues well, you will never, because that's how people tell you stuff in polite company, basically. If you can't read social cues, you will never be told that was a dumb comment, or you should not have said that, or should not have done that. And so some people are harder to read than others, but sometimes you say something and you're just like, oh man, this is the wrong crowd, I shouldn't have said that. But, sometimes I ask my wife, if I say something stupid or you're embarrassed that I did something, please tell me, because sometimes I don't know everything, and I want to be a better person. I want to be more self-aware. Oh, sorry, I had to sneeze.
Bless you.
So, tell me that. And that's that accountability partner that is like, tell me if I'm going off track. So that's kind of like what you said about our podcast. If we feel like either one of us is going off the rails on a crazy train, we'll just be like, yo, bring it back in. And so that's good.
Completely, and I agree with. I like that comparison of sometimes as adults, we instruct our children and we tell them that was good, that was bad, but just because I'm 30-something years old, it doesn't mean that I know everything or that I have everything down or that I act correctly in every single situation. And so having someone that cares for you and loves for you, and that actually happened at work one time. I have a good friend at work, and we started at the same time, and we were in a meeting or something, and I didn't say anything, but I can't remember what it was. I might have. I don't know. I don't know. I might have looked at my phone or something during a meeting, and my friend came to me and said, did you notice that so and so saw you look at your phone? And I was like, dang, well, I had a good reason for looking at my phone. I can't remember what it was, but I had a good reason for it.
Someone messaged me on Instagram.
No, it was like my wife is pregnant and something. But regardless of what it was. My friend felt comfortable enough to say to me, like, it's probably not a good idea to check your phone. Like, get an Apple Watch so you can read your message on your watch instead of on your phone. But it was just great. Like, and that was a small correction, and it was just kind of wrong place, wrong time type of thing. And there was zero adverse effects from it. But that person felt comfortable enough to come up to me and say, "Hey, did you notice that?" And I think that's huge.
And also part of this, and we've already talked about this, but having the humility to accept that is important as well. One time I was working at a company, and I was like an account manager, and we had a very, very demanding client, and it was the biggest client that the company had, and they were super demanding, and we had hourly deadlines throughout the day that we had to meet, and felt like I was busting myself like hard as I could to do good by this client. And then the sales guy that also has a relationship with them, he comes over and he is talking to me and the team of analysts that I was kind of managing. And he's like, "You guys, we got to step it up with this client." And I was kind of like, "What? We got to step it up?" I'm like, "Dude, we're already stepped, man. We're already stepped up.
We're stepped up to 10.
And like, I was very defensive. And I realized that did not serve me well at all. That was very early in my career. I think that was like the first year that I was out of, or within the first 2 years that I was out of college. And that was when I realized that being defensive or not taking criticism gracefully does not serve you at all. And because I was kind of like, oh man, I do tons of, I kill myself for this company, and that was a big lesson for me, and from then to be humble, and to accept criticism, because sometimes I don't know. Obviously, whatever I was stepped up wasn't good enough, and I was maybe wasting energy in the wrong way. So just understanding what needed to change and how I could pivot. Asking questions, humility goes hand in hand with having that accountability partner, or just anybody telling you about something. Sometimes people who's not your accountability partner will say something that's not kind, and just be like, "Hey, you did terrible at this. You need to think about this." And you're like, "Okay, well, before I get offended, is that true?"
Yeah, you're like, well, first off, ouch. Secondly, okay, I'll think about it. I'll consider it.
Yeah.
All right. So typically, what we do on these podcasts, when we talk about certain topics, we come up with a quote, a personalized quote, a Jared and Ethan quote that we put together. So my quote for self-awareness is, I said to be cognizant of how your actions affect those around you. Learn to speak with people in a considerate way, and be willing to take criticism from those that care about you.
Yeah.
Which we just talked about that.
Yeah.
But
it's good.
Yeah.
I like that.
So that was mine.
Be willing to take criticism. That's great. Mine is that if you I feel like I always use analogies in mine, but I feel like the imagery is good because you can see the imagery and you're like, yeah, I can understand that. It's kind of like a parable.
Yep.
I'm just trying to teach the way that the Savior taught.
It's a quotable.
So if you shoot at a target over and over again without checking where you're hitting, you will never be able to make the appropriate adjustments to hit the spot to hit the intended spot. Through self-awareness, we can be more intentional about our actions to become the person we want to become.
Yeah.
So
If you don't know where you're hitting, then you can't reassess and
yeah, if you're not ever thinking about your actions or whatever, or what you're doing or what you're saying and what the repercussions of that, then you're never going to be able to adjust that and be more intentional, be more an intentional person about who you are and what you're saying and what you're doing. So, and that's what I think that's part of what Brothers Creed is all about, is how can you build your creed if you're not intentional about building that or implementing that?
Or if you feel like, oh, my creed's already set, I'm good. I already have a strong creed. I don't need anything else. It's just like, I mean, you will continue learning until the day you die, and then the real learning will start.
Or you need to be reminded of your creed regularly.
Yeah.
Even if you have the best creed, you need to be reminded of it regularly and work on those principles, because nobody's perfect, and we're all trying to strive for that. Strive to be better. So,
yeah, I like it.
Well, this has been great. Thank you guys for joining us today and talking about self-awareness. Hopefully you can think about this and think about how you can implement some of these skills in your own life. Please follow us on social media, Instagram at a.brothers.creed.
Also, Facebook. We have a Facebook page, Brothers Creed.
Yep, and also on Spotify or Apple Podcast. I think we're on Pandora as well.
Yeah, we are. And then go on to basically any device that you listen to your podcasts on. And if you're listening, just push the subscribe button.
Yeah, and please share. If you guys are enjoying these episodes, please share. We'd like to hear that feedback. So it's been great. This has been a great journey so far, and we plan to continue it. And we'd love to hear more feedback from those people around us. Tell us what you want to hear about too. So that'd be great.
Yeah, we love it. Let's continue to be self-aware and build that creed together.
Let's do it.